Here in New York City, light heavyweight champion Bernard Hopkins and former champion Chad Dawson announced their rematch, which will take place Saturday, April 28th. It's in Atlantic City, Boardwalk Hall, and it'll be broadcast live on HBO World Championship Boxing.
Another legendary showdown with the legendary Bernard Hopkins, by now almost 50 years old, has been giving rocking chairs at press conferences and canes, and yet he keeps on surprising all of you and really turning back the clock. He has been involved in some of the biggest fights, has been making history, started really that history tour, I would say, about 20 years ago when he was set out to do the middleweight title defenses, the 20 middleweight title defenses, and then the rest we all know is just one history-making fight after the other. It's a pleasure now for me to introduce to you Aaron Davis, the commissioner of the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board, to make some comments.
I'm just happy that this fight's going to take place in my jurisdiction in New Jersey. Fights like this are supposed to happen in New Jersey. We consider ourselves as one of the best places for boxing and for the best fighters to show their skills. And I'm pretty sure that night these two fighters will show their best, because we're going to have our best referees, we're going to have our best timekeepers, and we're going to have our best judges. So with that, good luck to both sides, and I'll see you guys soon.
It's a pleasure now for me to introduce to you Kerry Davis, the Senior Vice President of Programming for HBO Sports. Kerry was right. Ken Hirschman stepped up and knows that this is a real fight, this is a big fight.
Thank you, Richard. Webster's dictionary defines logic as the science that investigates the principles governing correct or reliable inference, or said another way, reasoning that creates a certain truth. So to defy logic means that you are in effect defying certain principles of truth. What Hopkins has done in his boxing career has defied logic. It didn't start with his 20 title defenses at middleweight, an extraordinary athletic achievement, or his dominance of Tito Trinidad in the middleweight unification series, certainly something that was considered an upset at the time. But it started with the domination of Kelly Pavlik in a fight we all thought it wasn't a question of whether he won or lost, but a question of whether or not he was going to get knocked out. Then it went on with Tarver, and certainly culminated when he became the oldest man to win the light heavyweight division in John Pascal's hometown. Now he attempts to defend that title, arguably against the most talented fighter in the division in Chad Dawson. Dawson's resume reads like a who's who in the light heavyweight division. Two wins apiece over both Tarver and Glenn Johnson, and a win over Thomas Adamek, which in retrospect looks terrific, as he is now a heavyweight contender. Logic says that Dawson may be a bridge too far for the old man. Yet just down the street, another athlete is defying logic. An undrafted, lightly recruited Harvard graduate is dominating the basketball world in ways that are inexplicable. Well, I say to you that Hopkins has been defying logic for years, and although there are no cute monikers or nicknames that go with his achievements like Linsanity or Lincredible, like when Lin plays or when Hopkins fight, you must pay attention. Therefore, Hopkins-Dawson is must-see television. Our start time is 10:15 Eastern, 7:15 Pacific, immediately following 24/7 on the East Coast and preceding 24/7 on the West Coast. And one final note to the Dawson supporters. The other night I went to the Knicks game and watched Lin match up with a prepared, angry, and focused Deron Williams of the New Jersey Nets, one of the most talented point guards in the world. And let's just say for that night, logic was restored. So let's see what happens on April 28th.
Kerry, you were right on until that last comment. You'll see what's restored in April, right on HBO. It's my pleasure to bring up at this time our host and my longtime friend, Ken Condon.
All right, fellas. This is a boxing promotion. I don't give a shit about basketball. All right. Welcome, members of the press and the media. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support of our boxing program in Atlantic City. And when you think of boxing in Atlantic City, you can only think of one casino, and that's Caesars Atlantic City. We've hosted 99% of the major championship fights in Atlantic City, and we look forward to hosting this great matchup in Atlantic City. It is a pleasure to be back working with Gary Shaw. Gary and I go back to many, many years ago, maybe too many than I want to think about, but a long time ago when Gary was a member of the commission and pretty much was my confidant in terms of helping me understand the boxing business and gave me a lot of insight into it. And I still love it today. Richard, it's always a pleasure dealing with Golden Boy, and you and David have been a pleasure to deal with as always. Aaron, my bodyguard from the New Jersey Boxing Commission, couldn't do it without you. Aaron's been a great partner in this process, and we look forward to it. You know, there is a unique situation when you look into New Jersey. There's a certain point in New Jersey that there's a boundary, and everything, when you get over that boundary, sort of switches to Philadelphia sports. And Bernard Hopkins is from Philadelphia and really is associated very highly with South Jersey and the Atlantic City market. So it's like Bernard's home, Atlantic City, and we look forward to welcoming Bernard back to Atlantic City. And we're very thankful that both fighters have agreed to make this show and make this show available to the East Coast boxing fans. It's a great fight for the East Coast boxing fans. And we look forward to a great matchup, and we look forward to a great night on April 28th. About 4 years ago, I was doing a press tour with Bernard, and he was fighting a fellow by the name of Kelly Pavlik. And we had about 3,000 people show up in Ohio, and Bernard was there, and the crowd was obviously for Kelly Pavlik. And Bernard walked around and he voted on posters. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that's got to be one of the hardest things someone to do when you have 3,000 people who want to see you get your butt beat. And he ends up going to Atlantic City and showing the people from the Pavlik crew what boxing was all about. That night, Bernard Hopkins beat Kelly Pavlik handily. The man to my right is a legend in boxing, and we are very fortunate to have him in boxing, and we look forward to hosting this show in Atlantic City, and we look forward to hosting Bernard Hopkins and Chad Dawson.
Rather than introduce Chad by giving his accomplishments and his record and all that, I want to take about 5 minutes not to rewrite history, but to relive history so that everybody knows why we're here today. For years, Bernard Hopkins said he would fight Chad Dawson, but never would fight Chad Dawson. He went on ESPN and said, if Chad wins this fight, he'll fight, whatever. After Bernard fought Pascal, they wanted a rematch. We were next in line. We had the contract. We stepped aside with the provision that Bernard would fight Chad next. And to their credit, they did fight Chad next. They honored that commitment. In that fight, whether you think Bernard fouled Chad or you believe Chad fouled Bernard, at the end of the fight, the referee raised Chad's hand as the winner of that fight, no matter what you believe. After that happened, there came a time where the referee wrote to the Attorney General of California and said, Chad won the fight, and these are my reasons for believing that Chad won the fight and raising Chad's hand as the winner of that fight. Golden Boy, on behalf of Bernard Hopkins, disputed that. We went to a hearing in California where the referee got up and changed his entire story and believed it should be a no contest. We were shocked. I admit that. We sat there with our mouths open, especially after we were in receipt of the letter to the Attorney General, and that's how the commission voted, no contest. After that, we went to the WBC convention, where the Golden Boy representatives, on behalf of Bernard Hopkins, lobbied for no rematch, no mandatory immediate rematch with Chad Dawson. I believe had they won that, there'd never be another fight between Bernard Hopkins and Chad Dawson. I lobbied hard as I've ever lobbied for a fighter, on behalf of Chad, gave all my reasoning why this rematch should happen for not only the benefit of the Chad, but for the benefit of boxing, once and for all. And that's how we're here today. The WBC demanded an immediate rematch. To Richard's credit and Golden Boy, and certainly to Bernard and his team, they accepted that decision. And to Ken Hirschman's credit, he bought the fight. That's the history. There is no other history. There's nobody rewriting history. That's the history of the fight. That's how we're here today. This fight will not end like fight one. Chad was like no one I've ever seen in the ring, and I've been with Chad most of his career. He was angry, he was disturbed, he was frustrated. He wanted to fight Bernard Hopkins, and he wanted to give the fans their money's worth, and it didn't come to pass. I will tell you that that will not happen in this fight. This is going to be a fight to the finish. This is a once and for all. This is Bernard's, Hopkins' goodbye to South Jersey and Philadelphia. Chad Dawson is the best 175-pounder in the world. I've always believed it. I've always believed that he's been underappreciated because of his style, because he makes his boxing look effortless, and because of that, he doesn't get the accolades or the appreciation from the fans that he should. I want to present to you the man that I know is the best 175-pounder in the world, the man that will walk out on April 28th victorious, once and for all, bad Chad Dawson.
Right. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm not going to be up here long, but I want to thank HBO, Ken Hirschman, you know, everybody who lobbied for this fight to happen again. I know a lot of fans were disappointed after the last fight, but I just want to make one thing clear. On that night, I came to fight. I came to fight. I wanted to fight Bernard Hopkins, and I was looking forward to dethroning him that night. You know, but when he pulled the stunt he pulled, which was a stunt to me because it was a stunt, you know, I mean, it messed up all of my plans. So now I'm back here. I gotta fight him again. I gotta go through the same things I went through before. When, in all actuality, after that night, I should have been the champion. I don't know how he feels about it. I don't know how you Bernard Hopkins fans feel about it. You know, you guys are still running around saying this guy's a legend, but legends don't act the way this guy acts. They don't do the things he does. I would have fought Bernard Hopkins with one finger that night. One finger, and probably still would have won. But I didn't, you know, I'm not gonna go on crying about that stuff. But this fight, I just want a fair fight. I want Bernard to come out and fight. I don't want no low blows, no headbutts, no. Let's just be two men, like the men we are, and let's fight. That's all I want, Bernard. That's all I want. I just want to fight. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Don't be a little punk this time.
Thank you. Let me just say make a few comments before I'm going to introduce Team Hopkins. Gary Shaw said that Chad Dawson was angry, frustrated, and disturbed, that he's never seen him like that. Well, that's no reason to go and lift your opponent off your feet and slam him to the ground just because you're angry, frustrated, and disturbed. There really is no place in boxing, and I agree with you, Chad, this should be a boxing fight and not a wrestling match. And I do hope that you leave your wrestling tactics at home and come to fight, and that you're not going to be angry, frustrated, and disturbed, because I do know that the Athletic Commission here in Atlantic City is not going to tolerate that kind of behavior. The other thing is, you know, WBC or any other sanctioning organization, they don't make fights. They certainly don't make fights at that level. And there was no reason for Bernard Hopkins to take the fight. just because the WBC ordered it. There were many other options, but it just shows you what Bernard Hopkins is all about, what he's made of, that he accepted this challenge, and he's going to set the record straight once and for all.
Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to thank everybody that made this fight happen, Richard and everybody at HBO, and Mr. Shaw and his team. Like I said, I have no chance since he was a young athlete, since he was a young kid, and he's a very talented athlete. But the challenge is now, as we deal with the history of this month, and we talk about throwbacks and like he said, legends, I key on certain things. Like when the young man was speaking earlier, he said, I gotta fight this man again. He didn't say, I get to fight this man again. One says one thing to me, the other one says something else to me. And I key on small things like that when I watch athletes. This athlete sitting to my right is cut from a cloth that I'm sure you guys remember. We've been in the losses here of late, and we've seen the history. When we've lost the Goody Petronellis, we've lost the Angelo Dundees, we've lost the Joe Fraziers. These guys are what we call old school. This is what we call legacy and history. This guy's cut from that crew. And like I said, he's cut from one of those old school guys, like the great Bowie Fisher out of Philadelphia. This is our history. Butch Lewis and all these guys that we had lost, Bernard Hopkins is cut from that cloth. So I challenge the reporters and everybody to remember history and know the history of this sport. Reporters, there's nothing can be said about this man we haven't said. So even as a reporter, you're going to be challenged on this particular outing. Because now you have to find something to write about this man in the magnitude that befits him. And like I said, you've already written so much about Bernard Hopkins. Where do I go now? You know what I mean? So your creativity is going to have to come out. Mr. Smith and all you guys have been around and been writing about this man for years. You know what I mean? Because he is a legend. He has proven his legacy time and time again. When I look at Chad Dawson, I see a young man who has a future in front of him. But I've also seen a man like Bernard Hopkins do damage to young fighters as far as their future went. You know, all of this sounds great. When you go to the film, you see, I argue with Bernard after the fight. They took me to the film. I said, Bernard, he didn't hook your leg. You know what I mean? And his massage guy said, no, look, and he showed me the film because I couldn't believe it. I was like, he literally hooks your leg and MMAs you. This is boxing. Okay, we can say what we want. We saw the film. Yeah, I mean, you can say what you want. This is rap. This is rap. We're talking. I gave him his opportunity to talk. I'm talking now. So I was courteous to him. I beg him to be courteous to me. But like I say, we show how we raise. My thing is, go to the film. You'll see what I'm talking about. But you won't have to because in the second fight, Bernard Hopkins will be the legend that you've come to know, that you've come to understand. You know what I mean? And this young man, you'll see them guys hug in the ring and shake hands and nod heads and talk about good fight and all that after the fight. You'll see it at the end of the fight because we've seen it time and time again. So all I ask you to do is I challenge the supporters of Dawson and I challenge the Bernard Hopkins supporters that we should fill that arena up. We got two guys from the East Coast and they on the East Coast home now. We should fill that arena up. So I thank you guys for your time and your patience.
Thank you, Nassim. You know, it always is really an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce this legend. And I'm not going to go through all of that again, the legend and so on. We've heard all of that. But what I do want you to tell your readers or listeners or the people who are going to be watching at home, you have an opportunity on April the 28th at the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City to see one of undisputably, you know, those two sides, they might not agree on much, but I think they all agree that's one of the best fighters ever to lace up the gloves. And you're going to have an opportunity to see him for as little as $25. So I urge you, bring your families, bring your kids, bring people to Atlantic City to go and be part, to witness live Bernard the Executioner Hopkins. Please welcome Bernard the Executioner Hopkins.
All was said.
It's over. We done.
That's what we like.
Short and sweet. Okay, I guess we are going to make the fighters available for one-on-ones now. We're going to post them as well. And I can't wait to see you all in Atlantic City. Thank you.
I'm Kristal Hart reporting from New York City, and thanks for watching.